Okay, so first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the Fuhla Developer Online Conference. So I would love to welcome all of you. Maybe just to, break the ice, just to let everyone know this is going to be like a super informal session, right? So if all of you can just, say give me a thumbs up on your screen, or probably just, say hi at the chat box, it'll be great. So we'd love to, engage everybody here. Okay. All right. Okay, so just to let everyone know, this conference here, even though it's like Fuhla Developer Conference, right? But this session is going to be super informal, right? It's going to be very engaging, and we are all here to learn from each other today. And of course, today with me, there's 3 remarkable speakers that I would love to introduce to all of you in the lineup in a while, all right? So, okay, so now without further ado, let me just share my screen quickly. All right, let me know if you guys can see this. Okay, cool. All right, so just to let everyone know, basically Fuhla Developer Online Conference, what we do here is that this is going to be like a quarterly program where we invite all different, experts, programmers, CTOs, to just share their insights on different programming languages, right? Of course, the title will always be on the best practices, especially when it comes to programming languages. So this is going to be our quarterly event. So I want to, invite all of you and welcome all of you to this community. And of course, this will be we'll do this on a quarterly basis. So if you guys can continuously join us, that'll be great. So of course, without further ado, again, I would like to, before I start, right, and invite Mr. Wayne in a while, I would just love to, have a quick airtime here. So just to give you all just what this is all about. I mean, for Fuhla itself, for us, we are actually a community referral tool. And what we do is that we empower our clients' website and app with our Fuhla community. So basically, what we do here with Fuhla is that we focus on definitely programmers like yourself, right? Especially those of you who are techies, right? What we do is we want to help solve the problem, especially when it comes to driving more traffic to either your website or your applications that you're currently building for your company, or you're actually building for yourself, right? So so basically Fuhla itself, we are a referral tool, which we allow our clients, to plug in at any part of their funnel. So as long as you want a referral tool for your business itself, then you can just plug this in, and you can actually driving traffic to you. So what we do now is basically our solution is fairly simple. We conduct these 4 steps on it, right? So basically what we do is that we help convert our clients, customers into referrals. And also we allow clients to leverage on our community platforms when they want to actually they want to actually build their own referral tool. They can consider actually using us as a plugin instead. So this is just 4 steps on how to actually use Fuhla. Firstly, basically our clients or basically programmers like yourself, right? You can actually create a reward and also set a commission within our dashboard, then followed by actually a plugin. So you just can plug in Fuhla. Of course, we have our SDK, which you can just plug into your web or your app, so that you actually don't need to build your own referral system. So you can use our system and just plug it into yours. After you plug in, then you set a commission. Then eventually, basically you all the commission schemes that you set, right? What our system does is we actually create unique links for the users to actually share it out. So all referrals will actually be assigned a unique link. And last but not least, any referral, right, that is actually sent out through our system, we will basically Fuhla will manage all the payouts for our customers already. So if you're a programmer using our tool, we will handle all this payment for you already. So this is actually a 4 simple solutions based on what how to use Fuhla. So just to give you a gist, how it looks like inside. Basically, there's a dashboard that's prepared for you, which you can just create, your campaign, and then you can just create your reward. So you can actually set up your commission within our system itself. So it looks something like that. So within the system itself, when you set up your reward, you can actually put like how much commission you want to give out to the referrals, right? So you can set whether it's a fixed commission or a percentage commission. And then what you can do is actually you can create a custom event. For example, if you do create a custom event, it means that, let's say if you want a referral to refer a friend to go into your website, right, and perform a certain action, for example, sign up to your website, or make a purchase within your website or application, right? Then your system will eventually ping our API to tell when Fuhla can actually pay out that referral commission. So that's basically how it works out within our system. So on top of that, once you create all this commission and rewards within Fuhla already, right, you can also choose to embed. So of course, based on today's theme also, which is the best practices on PHP and Laravel framework, right? So on Fuhla itself, we support different types of SDKs as well. And we also have our Laravel as well as our REST API, where you can easily integrate it within your system, whether it's a website or an app, right? So with this REST API or even Laravel API, right? So all this you can actually connect, and you don't have to build your own referral system anymore. Okay, then moving forward, also you can also embed this within your own web or app, which will allow your customers to also convert to become your referrals. So again, our system generate like unique links in within, and where your own customers can actually share it out to their friends and family, and then to bring more traffic to your website or app. So yeah, and of course, last but not least, within our dashboard also on Fuhla itself, you can actually see all the referrals. So once you set up your commission, you integrate it within the API itself, and your system tells us when to pay out, you can see all your referrals here on our dashboard, as well as the customers. So everything here, like once you, if you set a manual approval, if you hit the approve button here, meaning to say that the system will then cash out the referral or the commission money directly to all these referrers of yours or our platform as well. Okay, then last but not least, also on Fuhla itself, we have around 100,000 users. So these users are all referrers, right? So if you put up your referral program of your app or web, right, it will go directly to all our users. So whatever rewards you set, so our users will actually get informed by your referral program, and eventually they can actually share it out. And again, on Fuhla app itself, they can actually receive all these referral payouts, and it will be handled from Fuhla. So yeah. And of course, to appreciate all of you here today joining us in this program, we, of course, Fuhla, we are giving out this tool, which I mentioned. That tool itself, we're giving out for free today. So thank you again. So once this conference is over, what my colleague Glenn will do is that she will probably email you all this. So you can check your email right after this conference as well, where you can actually sign up the free tool where you can use Fuhla as your referral tool if you're building any website or app in the future. So of course, that's all. Thank you so much for the airtime you guys giving me. So now, without further ado, I think we'll go back to our program at the moment. Of course, right now we would love to welcome Mr. Wayne. So Mr. Wayne, he's basically the CTO of Inertia Labs. Okay, so what Mr. Wayne will be doing is that he will be actually sharing on the best practices actually using PHP. And of course, with Mr. Wayne also, he worked with Malindo Airlines before. So I think without further ado, everybody please welcome Mr. Wayne. So back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Jazz. I am honored that so many people have joined this conference and given me some airtime to talk about my experience and my company. So what Inertia Labs is we are a data analytics company focusing on retail sales data. And we provide this as a service to our clients to analyze their sales performance across multiple outlets and regardless of their organizational structure configuration. Okay, I'm going to share my slide now. Yes, so what I'm going to be discussing is lessons in writing web applications at 33.6 kbps, right? I started out writing my first web application when in 1996. Okay, and at this time, I had joined up with some of my colleagues, and we decided to build a DVD library system where we will be putting up the DVDs that everyone owned. And this is 1996 around where DVDs first came up, and people couldn't afford to buy many of them. They had a few select ones, and that was my first experience writing a web-based application. Now, a web application, there can be many ways of defining that, but I define it as any system where the data is not static, right? It's not just a website. It's not just a where you're posting your particulars. And back in 1998, back in 1998, there was not that many dynamic websites. The dynamic websites that existed back then were websites like Amazon, which started in 1996. So e-commerce platforms were already starting in 1996. However, the biggest problem that everybody had was bandwidth. Okay, so the internet used to be very, very slow. And if anybody had jarring connections here in Malaysia, you would know that it was dreadful. And trying to set up e-commerce systems where you had dynamic pages was also a nightmare, right? There were a lot of challenges. Not only was the bandwidth bad, but the web servers and the application servers were practically non-existent. You were very limited to what you could have, right? And the e-commerce company that I worked for at that time, which was based in the States, we thought it was peculiar, but then I found out it was actually a very logical setup for everybody. It was set up like this. You had a static page server. In most cases, it was a Netscape server. Yes, Netscape did write their own web servers at one point, and they were great for hosting static pages. If you try to do anything dynamic with the CGI bin, it got very, very bad and confusing. And it would also not be very stable, okay? You would enter a website with through the static page, and then you end up at your dynamic page server. In the case that for myself, we were using Microsoft's IIS 4.0, which was, if you think 6.0 was unstable, you should have seen 4.0. There were so many limitations that we had to deal with. We couldn't turn on sessions, for example, right? Something that today on the web service today, you would have no issues running. We had huge amounts of problems running. If we turned on sessions, we found that the servers would spike up on the RAM and CPU in almost no time with maybe 50 concurrent users, right? So there was a lot of problems that we had, not only in bandwidth, but the web servers. Okay, so based on these limitations, we had to design our solutions to take these into account, right? We had to come up with basically, in some cases, almost shoestring type solutions where we would have to do a lot of R&D to see what would actually cause the servers to fail, what would the speeds be if users were connecting. In those days, it was almost all dial-up. It was more than 90% dial-up. This is before DSL came into prominence. This is before cable modem came into prominence in the States. So we had to deal with a lot of problems, and the prevailing setup mindset that everyone had at that time was that everyone had to be on a thin client architecture. So what is a thin client architecture? The thin client architecture is basically a setup where the minimal amount of data required is transmitted to the client, and the minimal amount of data required is captured from the client, right? Anything that would slow down the user experience was extremely frowned upon. Oh, and in those days, the browsers was also, they weren't great, right? You had NCSA Mosaic, which ended up becoming Netscape, which became Netscape Navigator. Navigator 4 was pretty good because it had a lot more JavaScript integrated with it. You had, on the Microsoft side, you had Internet Explorer, the notorious Internet Explorer, but it did work. I would say that it did work. It eventually got clunky and heavy, but for the most part, you know, if you were just doing basic stuff, you didn't have that much problems with it. Okay. Now, how does this relate to today's problems that we have? Okay. The problems really haven't gone away in my mind. Okay, because as we've been able to stabilize web servers, databases have gotten a lot more stable than they used to be as well. I think one of the problems is that there is a certain over-reliance on frameworks. Okay, and I have a story behind this. When I was at Malindo Airways, I was asked to quickly put together a system that could capture and process all the flight schedules so that internally the engineers and on the ground at the airports didn't have to run to a console to look at what are the flights that were coming in, what are the aircrafts that were coming in. So I was able to capture the data from a file that was exported from the flight management system, and then bring it into a web server, right? And there was no issues with that, but it wasn't very nice. The reason is because I didn't have a developer at that time, but I needed to get it up. So using PHP, I rapid prototype, just something to bring it up and to show the management that, hey, this is something you could use. Now, because it wasn't very snazzy, it wasn't mobile responsive, again, I was just trying to get it done, right? I ended up hiring a developer who was a Laravel developer. And you know, he came in and I said, look, let's just rebuild this from the ground up, right? You work on the database, I'll work on the database, you work on the front end, and you make it nice and snazzy and mobile responsive and interactive. And that's what he did. And he did a really, really good job at that. But there was a major problem. It was really, really slow pulling the data out. So I sat down with him and we went over what he was doing on the Laravel side. And I noticed, I said, hey, why are you using this query? I already gave you the query string you need to use. Why don't you just use that? And he said, oh, because Laravel can handle all the data manipulations that needs to be done. And you know, we don't have to rely on this query. So I said, okay, fine, let me do this. So I converted the query into a stored prompt. And I said, okay, why don't you try doing it with the stored procedure instead? And he said, well, no, you know, the framework is doing it well. I know what I'm doing with it. And that's when I had to pull rank. I said, look, all right, I want you to try this, irregardless of what you think Laravel is going to be doing and helping you with, okay? And it goes back to what I had learned under the thin client architecture, which is don't bring everything into the database, into the application server, right? And rely on the application server to then do all the slicing and dicing you need to do. So finally I convinced him, I said, okay, I want you to do this, right? This is I'm not accepting any argument back. You need to do this and execute it this way. If anything, if I'm in error, I will admit so, right? So he did. And we got a 20x performance improvement on that. Okay. So there is, and after he saw that, he was completely bought in, right? I taught him how to write stored procedures. He was writing stored procedures and optimized queries all over the place for everything he did, because he finally understood that, yes, the framework helps you get things done quickly, but they may not be the best way to move forward. Okay. Now I know it's weird for me to like say something negative about Laravel, right? I think it's a really, really great platform to do a lot of things visually on the front end. But on the data side, there's still a lot of things that could be improved on, okay? So what we were able to do was we were able to limit the amount of data that was coming out of the database, and that gave us the 20x performance gain that we were struggling with. And then the users were much happier because they saw the performance coming in, and they were much happier with what they were able to see and do at that time. Okay. So in order to implement this kind of a situation where you optimize the data, is really, really important that you look at indexing, but not just indexing every single column in every single table, right? You have to pick where you're gonna fight your battles here. It has to be on the right tables. It has to be on the right columns where you create the indexes, okay? Because if you over-index the database, you're gonna have a lot of problems when you need to re-index the database, right? When you re-index the data, you're going to have to continually re-index the database, because the database, as new data comes in, right, the old data becomes irrelevant, right? So you would have to continually set up a cron job basically to re-index the database. And if you put too many indexes in, it's going to take a really, really long time, and then you just bog yourself down. Okay. I spoke about optimizing your queries and your stored procedures, right? For security purposes, please don't pass query strings in your parameters in the browser, right? It's really, you're open for anyone to see. If you pass an entire query string either through a cookie or in the URL redirect. So pass parameters, make sure they're hashed so that you're not exposing yourself. And also when you do process the parameters, make sure you strip out special characters like single quotes, double quotes, right? These can encapsulate query commands that you don't want executed on your database. Okay. Most importantly, your database tables must be normalized. What that means is that you need to have an understanding on your schema. You need to optimize your tables so that when you do a join, you're not going to be pulling more data or less, or you're going to be missing out on data. There's a lot of I've seen a lot of databases where it's just not good, right? The tables are just not normalized, so a lot of the users, the application developers, have a lot of problems trying to write additional features later on for their system. Okay. Now, this is something I've seen, which is a present day problem. And this is actually more on the user side, where I see a lot of error looping where it just kind of spins out of control, right? And it's not really on the client side that's where the issue is. It's when they keep hitting the web server or the application server. Okay, big problem, right? Because you have so many tools in front of you now, especially with the browsers, which are much more powerful. You're able to implement a lot of things in JavaScript today that we didn't used to be able to. in the internet dark ages, right? Where we would have to, we had no choice but to bounce it against the server because there was so many limitations of what we could do on the client browser itself. Okay, so move the error checking to the front end, to the client browser. Okay, which means more JavaScript, which for some people is a bit of a headache, but I think it's definitely worth learning and making sure that you leverage that as best as possible, because this is all processing that's taken place out on the client side, and it doesn't interfere with your servers or your back end or your bandwidth. Okay, and only send what you need. Okay, sometimes people capture way too much data than they need, and they lose or throw away a lot of that. So focus on only sending what you need, because ultimately, and this is my opinion, okay, the modern thin client, the bandwidth is still a bottleneck. Regardless of whether you're on 4G, whether you're on fiber, whether you're on 5G, whether you're hardwired, whether you're on wireless, bandwidth is still a bottleneck, regardless of that. Okay, so systems should still be built with the mindset that you should only go for your bandwidth when everything is ready to go, right? So very similar to what we had before, but now you have things which are much more powerful. You have web servers, application servers, which are much more powerful, much more robust. And you have client-side browsers and laptops that are much more robust and much more powerful than anything we used to have. Even mobile phones today are incredibly powerful compared to the machines we had in the past. But it doesn't mean that you should just throw everything to the systems that you have, right? My suggestion, my advice is still do the right thing in the right places. Now, one of the things that I don't really like is when people look at data, look at an application server and say, hey, we'll just process all this data in the application server. That causes a lot of issues on the application server, right? Regardless of what the specification is. When I was with Standard Chartered Bank, I was supporting an application that was used in 78 countries worldwide. It had 16,000 users, and it was only single instance hosted in Hong Kong. Okay, nightmare, because we didn't have co-location in different data centers. All the traffic had to go into Hong Kong. Now, if you're in Asia, or you're in Southeast Asia, or you're in America, or you're in Europe, it's not as much of a problem. But when we had offices in South America, and we had offices in Africa, there were huge bandwidth issues, because what the developers for the system was doing was that they were loading all the data into the application server and then expecting the application server to crunch all the data. I have no idea why they designed it this way. I had a lot of input that they should change, but they didn't have to take my advice, right? So we had to struggle with a system that would basically flip over every 3 to 5 days, right? And we would have to restart the application server over again, because every connection, every session that the users would create would basically, suck up this huge cache on the application server. And I was fighting them every single day. I said, look, move all the offload all the handling onto the Oracle database, which is just sitting there not doing that much. And they were just hesitant. So the lesson is, make sure you do the right things in the right place. The application server is great for when you are doing functional things with the system or the data, right? But don't load all the data into the application server and then try to do the manipulation there. Database server is not just a hard drive where you store data. The database server is very, very fast when it deals with millions and millions of rows of data. It can be very, very fast. Okay. One of my recommendations for everybody, my advice to everyone, is to brush up on SQL skills, because SQL skills never go away, especially on RDBMS systems. NoSQL systems are pretty good too, but if you try to do reporting in NoSQL systems, you'll see a new level of pain that's different from RDBMS. Okay. Again, I can't reiterate this enough. Don't overuse the application server. In this instance, also the web server, right? Web server serves the data that's coming through. Application server does whatever manipulations it needs to, but don't give it everything. Don't try to make it do everything for you, right? Make it do the right things in the right places. Most of all, focus on the user experience. Okay, going back to the first point, bandwidth is still a bottleneck no matter what. Okay, no matter what connection you have, bandwidth is still going to be an issue. So if you're able to alleviate and just use bandwidth as when you need it, and try to focus your processing either on the client side, on the application server, on the database server, I think you'll be able to deliver a better user experience than if you don't. Okay, Jazz, I've reached the end of my slides.
Nice. All right. Thank you, Mr. Wayne. Okay, I think right now let's open up the floor to the audience. I see there's actually 3 questions here. Actually, Raj, are you there, Raj? Raj Kumar?
Yes, I am here.
Awesome. I think it's better if you could just, ask Mr. Wayne your question.
Yeah, okay, sure. Mr. Wayne, just I wanted to understand, because you were discussing about slow internets and all, So I was thinking, is progressive web application, the latest technologies coming up like Gatsby, the front-end framework, is it really worthwhile to try on clients, or is just something like a theory?
I think that there's no guarantees, because I think everyone's situation is slightly different on what you plan to do. You really have to do a lot of your own R&D and testing and performance metrics to make sure that you are getting what you need out of it. And the challenge with any new tech is that you're trying to apply an old mindset into something that could give you a performance enhancement, right? So doing a straight conversion first at the first time, you're going to hit challenges where you're still anchored thinking in the past, right? Ironic, considering that I'm saying don't overuse bandwidth if you don't need it. But I think that's true for any technology, is that you would have to look and you would have to change what you're currently doing to get the most out of the new tech.
Nice. Okay, did that answer your question, Raj? I think we will also have second
yes, thank
one.
you. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Okay, second, can we have HL Leong? Is HL Leong here? Are you there? If no, I will move on to Lovesh.
Actually, I'm reading the questions
Oh,
as
you're
well.
reading. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so HL Young has said that isn't stock procedures hard to manage in terms of version controlling and doesn't really provide any performance gain.
Yep.
This is very wrong. Stock procedures are very, very good. And the other thing that stock procedures provides you is that it gives you a level of security that you don't have with queries, even if you optimize the queries. Because the stock procedures will not execute correctly if you don't pass the right parameters in. It will only accept the right parameter, right? If the incoming parameters are not set up correctly, or you pass the wrong parameter, it'll break. So SQL injection at one point was a big problem because people were not optimizing, or they were running SQL queries that were open-ended and allow people to basically execute DML level instructions, right? And DML level instructions are things that can change your database. So you can drop a table, for instance, or you could do an insert or you can do a select from a table if you knew what it looked like, right? I had a friend who was shopping on an e-commerce website, and he happened to notice that the parameters being passed were a little odd. And he ran it through a decryptor, and he actually saw that the entire SQL string was being passed in the parameter. And he was able to change it, manipulate it, and rerun it against the e-commerce site. And he was able to pull stuff out that he should not have been able to see. So again, this is back in 1999. So it's a really long time ago. People have improved, but SQL injection used to be a huge problem at one time. Stock procedures gives you a level of security that you do not have. And stock procedures are really, really fast. If someone's telling you stock procedures are slow, that's because they don't know how to write them.
Nice, Mr. Wayne. I think we can take on one more question if you can see the chat box.
Yep.
That'll be last one.
I see one. It says, what sort of data manipulation operation should be done in a database by Nicholas? Joins. Definitely joins. Right. I've seen people try to pull, select star from table 1, select star from table 2 into the application server, and then use data frames to try to sort that out. That's fine if your tables are very, very small, or if you're doing a lookup, right? But if you're not, and you're actually trying to join transactional based tables, do it in the database.
Okay. Actually, we could actually take 2 more if you're okay.
Sure, no problem. I don't know. Can someone chime up? I see 2 or 3 other questions, but I don't know who's got the pressing need.
Sorry. Which one that you covered just now with Nicholas? Is it?
Nicholas, yes.
Okay. How about Zyman? Did you see Zyman's question?
Yes, premature optimization.
You covered.
I'm trying to think if that's such a thing. I think one of the things that this is my experience, and this is my experience with my friends who are developers as well. Version 1 of your code is never going to be the best version. Version 2 of your code is going to be slightly better. Maybe. Version 3 of your code is usually when you hit your stride and you really know what you need to do, right? So premature optimization I think that if you're talking about optimizing your database, there is no better time to optimize your database than at the start. You need to plan your schemas out, right? If you don't plan your schemas out, you'll hit a problem later on which you're not going to be able to extricate yourself out of. I've seen this several times. I've done it several times myself, and then ended up having to rewrite the schema. In terms of code, if you think that one version of your code is the only version you need to write, then you need to reconsider, right? Because there's so many things you can do to improve. And you know, I've gone back, and then after weeks or months, and come up with a bright idea, and gone back and updated my code, even though there was no errors. It's just that there was something that I could do better, right? One of the things that I tell my developers today, my developers at Energia Labs, is that what you build today may be defunct tomorrow, right? Always be ready to rewrite. Just make sure that you carry over all the best learnings you have when you do that. If you think that we're going to write something and then we're never going to change it, it's never going to happen.
Indeed. Thanks, Mr. Wayne. Okay, anybody else who would love to ask Mr. Wayne any question? Feel free to, either to put in on the chat box, or you can actually just turn on your mic.
I see one question. Can I just ask this question? Can I just answer this, Jazz?
Sure.
This is by Jivan Shamugam.
Yes, that's me.
Yes, and your question about lacking basic skill and how
Yeah.
it affects.
Yes, basically, right now, if you see, like you said just now about Laravel, the guy was depending on the Laravel to actually write the query instead of using the query that you provided. So that shows that that fellow does not really know about other technology that exists. So basically, right now we are facing the same problem where a lot of candidates nowadays just depends on the framework to do something. So when they have to do something that is fundamentally basic, like for example, a simple factory pattern to solve a problem, they were not able to do that. Like for example, a JavaScript, simple example. People are so dependent on React or Vue.js, Angular. When you ask them to do something super basic, they are clueless. And we are having extreme difficulty to find a proper candidate. What do you think about it?
I 100% agree. All right. One of the funniest things to watch is someone who comes in with a wealth of framework experience, and you ask them to do, a simple hello world, right, in the native code, whichever it is, whether it's PHP or it's Java or it's JavaScript or Python, and sometimes it eludes them, right, because they've been stuck in that idea that and the dependency on frameworks. We have the same problem, right? So in terms of hireability, how do we get over it? I consider myself a gray hair, right? Meaning that I'm pretty old in tech already. I have senior guys who are even older than me, right? And what I'll do is when I look at a candidate, one of the things I actually assess for is whether this person is able to learn, has a desire to learn, right? Then I will partner them up with my senior guys, and they will then mentor them, guide them, explain structures, whatever they need to learn, techniques, things they need to keep in mind, so that we build it up from the ground up. It's sometimes it's difficult when you see someone who's got. It's hard to turn away someone who's got like a lot of years, but working in certain frameworks that you don't use, and you say, okay, I want you to use this framework instead of the other framework, and it doesn't go no, right? That's I agree with you, Jivan. It's a big problem. So I'm very picky and particular about hiring my senior guys. For my junior guys, I look at, are they adaptable? Are they willing to learn? In some cases, they have no experience in the language I want them to. But if they demonstrate that they're able to think logically in a certain way, I will give them, I'll try them out and see whether we can build up the skill set in what we need.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we left one more question before our next speaker comes. Would you have any more questions that you all would like to ask?
Error checking on the front end, right? Is it just validation or is it more? I mean, this is from Luvesh Sandwani.
Yeah.
It's really up to you, right? People do all sorts of kinds of things, whether it's using something like JavaScript to pull out an image or whatever it may be, right? The point is that you just want to minimize the interaction with the application on the web server. I'm just using error checking as one example, but it could be anything that you're using as well, right, for validation. If there's something that can be done outside without touching the application on the web server, then you'll be better off with that. That's what I meant.
Okay, nice. Thank you, Mr. Wayne, for your time today. I learned a lot from you as well. All right, so yeah, I'm just gonna.
I will stop sharing now.
Yep.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Okay, give a virtual applause to Mr. Wayne. All right. So next we do have Mr. Gavin with us, and of course, Mr. Gavin, he is actually the CTO of ETC Tech Global Sdn Bhd. And with him today, he will be actually sharing the best practices, especially to handle performance of database. So of course, without further ado, let us all welcome Mr. Gavin.
All right, hi, let me share my screen.
Sure, floor is yours.
Right. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Gavin from ETC, also known as the Programming Factory, because we are passionate in doing programming for any IT solutions. We develop customized website, web applications, web system, as well as mobile apps by converting SME, corporates, and also startup ideas into digital solutions online. So today, I'm going to talk about the best practice to handle performance of database more effectively. All right. So these are the topics that I'm going to talk about. We have the queries and eloquent, eager loading, collections, and also others additional tips. So this would be more an overview of the best practices that that might be already know, but somehow that maybe we need to keep in mind and also recall ourselves whenever we are developing. All right. So first one, the queries and eloquent. Right. So we may need to always keep in mind that should always fetch the field that we need in your database query. So I will try to like show some of the coding so you guys can have some more easier to visualize like how it works. Okay. So as you can see, things we have in the columns in the user table, right? So it's very common that we might need a list to list the data, right? For this case, we have name, emails, and country, post, and also the categories of the post. So we may need to only select the field that we need, right? So in this case, we may need an ID because we need to keep in mind that in Laravel, right, we make use of the ID to actually link up with most of the relationships. So we should always have the ID. And in this case, we need the name and country code, which is the one that we need for the relationship for the country, right? And yep. So we should always keep in mind to have the only have the selected field that we need. Okay. So next is by adding the indexing on the table columns. So I mean, thanks to Wayne that shares, right? Should always have the right index on the right columns. Yep. So next will be combining multiple queries. In some of the cases, I would show you these examples. So we may need to get the count of something. Let's say in this case, we have the count of the posts for these particular users. And maybe we need to query for others informations, for example, the amount spent, the project durations, and as well as the user informations. So in this case, if someone that is just get to learn SQL query, probably they will write them in different queries. So in this case, we can always combine them, right? So I show you the examples here, which is in Laravel, we can have with count, and put in the relationships, and it will end up the queries in a single query. As you can see, it was selecting the columns of the users and also the count of the posts in a single query. Of course, this is just one of the examples. Yeah, in some of the cases that in the queries are being more complex, that we will try to not think about more, but just split them up into different queries. Yeah, but in terms of to have a better performance, so we can always consider to combine them in a single query. Okay. So in Laravel, that we will always query database with the Eloquent. So we should always consider to use a DB-raw query by using query builder or tool-based instead of Eloquent. Yeah, so in this case, as you can see, we have the users here, which is start with the Eloquent model, right? So we can do it alternatively with DB tables or with tool-based. So the difference here is just that it will not load everything that in the model. So maybe you can try one here.
Gavin, I think the audience is saying that they can't see your code editor.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Let me reshare again, maybe. How about now? Is it okay?
Okay, is it better, guys?
Can
Okay, yes. Yes.
Oh,
Answer
okay.
yes.
All right, all right, all right. Okay. So basically, what I'm showing is that we load the users without Eloquent model. Instead, we use a DB tables. Yeah. So the difference is just that it will not come with the information in the model. It will be a plain correction with the array. Yeah. But of course, it depends on the situation that we might need to process the data without the relationship and all that. So this would be depends on the requirements, right? So yep, for those that can't see the code just now that I mentioned about the selecting the columns here, for those few that is only be needed. Okay, So let me continue to the next one, which is eager loading. All right. So I think most of the people that started to use Laravel that will always miss out to use illegal loading when we are getting the data set. Right. So in this case, if let's say I need to have a list with a country which is relying on the relationships as well as a post and also the categories of the post, right? So in this case, you can see the code here. All right. So what we have here is the country relationships, so that we can always make use of eager loading. So if let's say I remove this one, for now we have 6 query here with the eager loading. So let's say we remove that. So you can see it will require 355 queries. Each of the row that it will being fetched, right? It will call up another queries. Yep, which is n+1 problem, right? So by using eager loading, we can avoid that. Okay, of course, we can also specify specific columns that we need on the relationships. So in this case, I need the code because we need that to have the relationship in works and also the name for the display, right? So we can mention about the columns here by putting the colon and also the field name, all right? So apart from that, in this case, we have a nested relationship as well, right? The categories is actually the categories of the post. So we can always use that by having the relationships and the nested relationship with a dot. We have post and the post category. So I put it load here. It's just that it's the same. Actually, I can put it inside here. Just that I wanted to show a different way that we can make use of the eager load. Yeah, probably you can make some conditions before putting this load. Okay. So it's the same case that if I remove this, and eventually it will be really slow. Yep, 393 queries here. Right, so put it back. Right, it's quick now. Okay, so move forward, talk about collections. Right, of course, there are many functions that we can make use with the collections. So I will just share a few that that we commonly use when we are processing a data-heavy task. So we can always chunk or split the data into a different set of array and processing them separately, right? In this way that we can eventually free up some of the memories, or even by splitting up the arrays, we can actually run each of the process. Maybe on the background, you can put it in a queue, yep, so that you can have them run simultaneously. Yep. And next would be lazy collections. Right, lazy collections is, if not mistaken, is being introduced in Laravel 6 onward. So is whenever you need to process a huge data, it will help you to reduce the usage of the memories, right? It's actually provides an indicators, yeah, of the items in the array. So you can try, okay, show some examples here. You can see. So you come with a lazy collections, and eventually there's the information about the indicators. All right. So next, get into some of the others additional tips. Okay. We can make use of the catch query results on some of the statics content. Yep. And there are some of the packages that I think that there's a lot of packages that we need to we can make use in terms of to having the queries catch being used. Like for example, this would be one of the samples. Yep. So you can have your content in the database that you catch. So second is that we can always keep in mind that we might have some of the obsolete records in the table that actually causing the performance being slow. So we can consider to have a periodical job to clean up the historical records and copy them into a housekeep table and clean them up in the table that are always being used, that probably we only need to get the recent records. So the historical records we can copy into a housekeep table, right? And next, make use of the queue, which is the we can use them when we can chunk the array. For like the example that I showed just now, we can chunk them into different set of arrays and then to put them into queue so that they works in the background and simultaneously. So in this case, it will actually speed the process and also not to lock the user on the request itself. So the process will run on the background. And next is about the store procedure and functions, which is I think Wayne mentioned just now as well, that we can make use of the store procedure to actually have a better in terms of the security. And in this case, we can somehow some of the logic that we might write it on the Laravel, maybe in the control or somewhere, or the logic will be run on the server so that the process and memory being used up is on the server. So in this case, that we can make use of the store procedure to put some of the logic on that, so that the process will run on the database server. So that eventually it helps up the performance. So number 5, in some of the cases, then before the process take place, right, instead of using the actual tables, we can copy the records into a temporary table just for the processing. Or maybe we can make use of some temporary table for the report generations, yeah, so that we can actually copy the records that we only need into a separate table, so that we don't need to always using the same tables with very huge records. And next, sometimes we can unset the PHP variable, because the PHP variable might hold a very big set of the content, the data, so that we can unset the PHP variable to free up some of the memories. If let's say after we process a huge array, then we can unset them before we continue to process the other one. All right, just I have ended my slide here.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. Very interesting session though. I think this is really, really important when it comes to database, especially when it loads a long time. Okay, now we are opening up to the floor. Is there any question from Mr. Gavin here? Especially those of you who are actually working currently on database. Anything from the members of the floor?
Hi, I'm Yifeng.
Hi, Feng. Go ahead, ask a question.
Actually, do the Laravel database role, the DB role function is able to doing something like we input the dynamic content, like we using a Node.js, right? We can based on what user requests, like the ID or something, we query the data. Is the DB role is able to do that? So
DB raw is referring to when you're you need to write some of the raw query instead of using eloquent way to get your data. So your question is about the you means is there a way that you
maybe something like I can type inside the chat box.
Sure.
Role.
You can see the chat box, right, Gavin?
Yeah, I'm looking on it.
Okay.
Where is something like this.
Oh, okay. This is about you putting in I mean you inserting something some of the variable inside the query, right?
Yeah. Is that able to do in the Laravel DB role?
Yes, we can do so.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Then actually, what was the equivalent compared with like the DB role? Is only the speed faster, right? Then why we?
Yep.
Yeah. Then why we need to use the rule of Laravel instead of the DB role?
All right. So to answer your questions, maybe I can show you some of the samples here. All right.
Okay.
Let's see. We have conventional, I mean, way in doing query in Laravel. You can see my code, right? All right. So in this way, we query a user table by selecting the specific fields and with some of the conditions and also the eager loading, right? I show you the data, right? As you can see, we end up in a collections with items and with all the records in a model. And each model, it comes with all of these informations here, right? So if we are using a raw, a DB raw way, or to base the same as well. Yeah, to base, eventually it will like drop the rest of the information that we need. Yeah, as you can see, it's a collection with each of the records in array. Yeah, so you see the difference, right? In eloquent model, it will come with a bunch of other information that it needs because it will need to load up the information for the model in order for the relationship to work.
Oh, that means DB role is only we get the data on there, right?
Yeah, when you wanted to write some raw query.
Oh, okay. Yeah, understand.
All right.
Thank you.
Answer your questions.
Yeah, understand. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Oh wow, we have more, way more. Okay. Oh wow. Zaiman is asking, what is your must-have Laravel packages related to performance?
Hi, Zaiman.
That's me, but I'm just reading out from you.
Okay. Zaiman here?
Yeah. Zaiman,
okay.
you there?
Right. Okay. So must-have Laravel package related to the performance. Yeah, I think I show one of it just now. When I show the result, as you can see, I actually have a package here installed. which is the debug bar. So I think this is very helpful as we can monitor like what are the queries being called. As well as you, in this case, you can monitor the performance as well. Like each of the queries, like how long the query took, and also the total memory being used, and also the time taken. Yep. So in this case, I would say this is the first thing that I will need in terms of before we are looking to solving the problem of the performance. This is the must. Yep.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So next we have Nicholas. Would you recommend using JSON fields for certain columns instead of normalizing them into separate tables? This is to minimize joins on multiple tables.
Yeah, hi Nicholas. So I think it will still depending on the situations. If we're using JSON field, we might need to consider how to make use of the columns, right? In most of the case, I would still prefer normalizing them into a separate table. But in case the column itself is very, the structure of the JSON is a very straightforward. It's just a one layer of JSON. And when we're using the column itself, right, is to tabulate something out for display. Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah. If otherwise, if we are putting in the JSON field, it somehow it hard to make use of it when we wanted to query it. All right.
Nice. All right. We have the next question here from Raj. He says, sometimes I see that for lighter apps, old version of Laravel is enough, say version 5.6. Do we really need to use latest version? Please share your experience.
For me, yeah, hi Raj. I will always, look forward into using the new one because I would see like what are new things that I wanted to use. Like one of the sample that I showed just now as well. In Laravel 6.0 and above, we have the what we call that. We have the one that I showed just now. Yeah, the lazy collections. Yeah, we have it just now here. Yeah, the one that I mentioned, lazy collections. So it's not something that we have in all the older Laravel versions. So it's something that new for us to have a better performance in terms of better securities. So I will always prefer to make use of the new one. Yep.
Okay. All right then. Next we have Yao Jing. Yao Jing, are you in here? Would you be okay to on your mic?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Okay. So I want to ask, let's say my application, I got like a lot of microservices. I keep on like guzzle and then calling this API and then that API, and then some of the API they need to be processed on the Docker container and then saved in like sometimes saved in NoSQL, sometimes saved in SQL. Yeah, a bit messy, I know. So is there any ways to optimize this thing?
All right. Is there any way to optimize? The messy of having different way in connecting to different systems and also storing the data into a database, a different database as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think first is to structure them out based on type of the services that you're going to link up them, and have your code being structures in terms of having them in a service class, I would say. Maybe you can have similar functions or the similar in terms of the services that you wanted to connect, you can have them all in a single service class. And
yeah, I want to ask like, is there any function like asynchronously, because like some of the function like they need to go through like TensorFlow or what, they need to like do some very heavy load process. So I like my code, we need to wait it to finish the part only can move to the next part. So it's like quite taking a lot of time there lah. So like any ways.
All right. I'm not sure whether it's your case that is applicable, that we might consider to use a queue to process that, because it's something that need to be wait, right? It's a long process to do, right? So we can consider to have them in a queue while the user is waiting for a result. Then probably you can show a status, right? Instead of like you are locking the user on the request itself lah. Yeah, so you can dispatch the job and then to let the queue to run while waiting the result to be ready, right?
Okay.
Consider using a queue. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, we have one more from Luvesh. Asking, is there a difference between tool-based and DB raw?
Actually, it's the same. It's just that if DB raw, you can do something like one of our friends that just now Yitfeng that's showing us. You can have your raw query that put in, and then you can have any raw query to put in and run it. Tool-based is actually still based on the model, and then it's simple as it is. Just put tool-based, and then it will like drop the rest of the informations for the model. Yeah, but the result is the same.
Okay, Luvesh, you got that? Nice.
All right.
Okay, so we still have like 10 minutes more to go. If there are any question, open up for the floor. Just turn on your mic, or you can just type on the chat box here. Anyone else got any question for Gavin? Best practices for database. Any more questions? If no, then we will end the session. Okay, we have one more here from Nicholas. What is, I think you meant what is the potential of Laravel in the coming years compared with other PHP frameworks?
I think it's a very interesting
yeah.
things to discuss about. Yeah. I would say is the potential of Laravel is the compatibility. I mean, the usability in terms of working with others front end framework. For example, we have Vue.js, and you will see there are more coming. Like for example, Livewire. There are many front end framework that coming in on top of the Laravel. So I see the potential of Laravel is that the compatibility and more options that provide us to try out, and also in terms of to speed up development and also better user experience.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. Raj, do you want to turn on your mic?
Yes, I would like to ask Gavin.
Sure.
Yeah, Gavin, I'm seeing that all along Laravel is supporting Vue.js as the front-end framework. And of course, there are other competitors and a lot of community developers for React and Angular. So what do you think this is? They are supporting Vue.js as the core front-end framework. Is there any advantage over the others, or is it they have any tie-ups with the Vue.js developers?
Actually, it's not tied up to Vue.js only. Lara do support React.js as well and Angular, but if you would like to use any other front end framework, I think there's no dependency on the Laravel, because you can always have them treat them as a separate system. One is the front end, by calling the API through the Laravel. But of course, Vue.js is come from some developers from the Laravel. So I think some of the practices that it might be similar. So I think it's easier to catch up for the beginners.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Raj. Okay, we have another one from Yik Fong. Compare with React, what is the advantage of Blade for development?
All right. What are the advantage of Blade development? I would say is easier to achieve because you just need to handle the Blade, and the everything is on the Laravel itself. So if compared with React, that you need to probably handle another set of routing, and also things that you will need to handle separately. So in terms of the advantage, I would say the speed, probably the speed of development.
Okay, HL, are you there, HL? HL, is your mic working? This is a long one. Okay. All right. If not, I'll just read it out. Okay.
Yeah, I read.
What's your take on Laravel's release speed? As good as it is constantly pushing out new stuff in new version, but any Laravel project will be constantly pouring resources to keep the application up to date. Say you start your project with version 6, by the time you reach production, probably latest the version is 7. By the time you are done with upgrading 7, it's moving to 8. Oh my goodness, this is an ongoing problem, I see. Gavin, any input on that?
Yeah, I think this is a real fact that it could happen in this case, because sometimes we have a project, is a long run project that haven't been live. So throughout the process that there will be multiple versions that coming out. So I will still think that it is good to consider upgrading them, but we should always go version by version. I mean, if not skipping a few versions up, that could be easier to manage. Because if we are skipping too much, then I think things that we need to fix is you may need to spend more time on that as well. So it's good to keep the version up, but do spare up some of the time that you need to foresee some of the problem that you need to solve, and also retest everything as well.
So does it mean every time you upgrade a version, then you will have to test it constantly? So do you do this on a very frequent basis?
I don't do this on a very frequent basis because depends on the projects. So if let's say it's a long run project, right? It's good to upgrade them. If it's like a one-time project, right? We definitely not going to like make any other development quite often. So I will just leave it at this. Right.
Okay. Nice. Thanks, Gavin. All right. Anyone else? I think we can take 1 or 2 more questions before our next speaker comes on board. Anyone else have any question? Just turn on your mic, Like I mentioned, it's an informal session where we're just here to learn from each other. Or if you're shy or your mic is not working, just put it on the chat box here for Gavin to answer. Okay, we have one more from Yik Fong. Is Blade suitable to build complex UI?
Okay, complex UI, I think it depends on complex in terms of the user experience or the fancy of the UI. So I guess if to answer this complex UI in terms of the user experience, I think a lot of the front end framework is more suitable because when we let's say we have Vue.js and React.js, that could be definitely provide a better user experience. Yeah, if just for Blade, yeah, I think it's still capable to build complex UI, like as you said. I mean, complex UI in terms of the fancy stuff, right? You will do it in the templating, because you can have a different component and also having a different templates. And you can make use of that to have a nested one, and also it's better for the reusability as well.
Okay. All right. Okay, Gavin, can you see this question from Hassan? Are you able to see all the questions there?
Hassan. Oh.
I think you can scroll to the end, you see.
Oh, all right. But you'd like to prefer.
Yep.
So vs VILT. Is Hassan here? Maybe you can further explain.
Hassan, can you turn on your mic? Yellow. Are you there, Hassan? Hello? Is Hassan here?
Hi, sorry.
No.
So tall stack is Tailwind, Alpine, Livewire, Laravel. So there is tall.
All right.
Wilt is Vue.js, Initia, Laravel, Tailwind.
Okay. I think I would still prefer in Vue.js. Yeah, because I think it's much more flexible in terms of customizing. In Vue.js is still much more customizable compared with a Livewire.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Hassan. Okay, last question. Any advice on project that have only one developer, like no senior to guide, no people to help code review, and any advice on how to improve and learning in this way?
All right. How, Eugene? I think this happens because sometimes that it's hard to get a senior in, but the project is in, so that we have no choice that we need to push a little bit to the someone's new. So I would say to go step by step, to not giving too much of the requirements at a time. So to focus on a smaller milestones, and to let them learn throughout the milestones.
Nice. Okay, did that answer your question, Yao Jing?
Yeah, thanks. I want to ask, do I need to really focus on the like scalability and all those like extendability, like how to do scaling and all those in Amazon? Because I don't know like how to improve. I'm alone to do the project. Yeah.
All right, I think this would be depends on your preference, of course. Each of the developers, some people that they would like to have more on managing projects, but some they would like to go in deep on coding. Some they would like to go more towards the infra, something on the cloud. Yeah, so yeah, it depends on your preference actually.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
All right. Okay, that's our last question already. Thanks so much, Gavin. Let's give him a virtual applause, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, Gavin. Okay, so now we have our next speaker. Let me just pull this screen share out. Okay, so our next speaker is Muhammad Ibrahim, Mr. Ibrahim. So
Hi.
Yeah, so Mr. Ibrahim here will cover basically the best practices, especially this is very, very important. Scams are everywhere. So the best practices of securing your Laravel application. So without further ado, Ibrahim, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jess. Let me share my slides. Can you guys see the slide?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks again, Jess. Because it's funny because this morning I just had a meeting in Bukit Aman CCID in regards to cybersecurity as well.
Nice.
So because there are so many scams and fraud involved in IT as well. So this is our responsibility as IT professionals to improve our security and also improve the product that we are building in order to protect our customers and also our assets. Okay, hi everyone, I'm Ibrahim. I'm CTO of FTX. A little bit about ATX. It was founded on 2011, and ATX means all transactions. So basically, we are just a startup at that time. Now it's 2022. I think it's about 10 years, 10, 11 years. So basically, we have evolved. So what we do is actually I'll explain later on what we do. Basically, we are involved in e-wallets. We acquire merchants as well. We process around 9 million transactions up till now. And we are also voted as top 50 rising startup in C region by Tech in Asia. You can see. Okay, ATX. So what do we have? We have 5 different brands under us: PayHub, MyPostPay, GoPay, Runcit Hero. If you have seen also HubStore anywhere, then you will know that this is from ATX. So we have a digital wallet platform, e-commerce platform, and also basically the main thing that we do is we process bill payments, international reloads, domestic reloads, gaming points. So this kind of things that you do. If you want to pay your bills, also we do the processing. Some of our partners, you recognize the I think the logos are DG, Maxis, and also our clients as well. So in terms of cybersecurity, because we are focusing on Laravel in ATX, if you can see, there are some of the projects that we built in Laravel last time, but now we are migrating towards Node.js platform. Also, we do have some application built in .NET and also Java as well. So we do have developers that knows multilingual, many languages. Some are maintaining on Node.js and some maintaining on Laravel side. So since our focus is on Laravel side today, because my talk is basically focusing on Laravel, PHP, and also directed towards management as well, developers, and also DevOps, because cybersecurity is a very broad topic. Cybersecurity 101, we go through the boring stuff first. We do have 3 basic principles: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These terms for data and also services that we are providing. So for management and also policymakers in company, what we have to do is first we have to create a policy, and also in the policy we have to state we have to identify our assets, streamline the process, and also we have to identify sensitive data, and also to remember that our source codes are also our valuable assets, and also we have to identify sensitive endpoints. For example, endpoints that process payment and also connect to third-party APIs such as SMS and also emails and notifications and whatnot. So we do also need to have policies against data access, against data tampering, and also for data removal. It's best to have a policy that we never remove data unless it's very necessary. And also if you are under B&M regulation as well, you have to keep the data for a certain period of time. Data being means that you have also to save the log data as well. And for now, because nowadays we are in agile trends, everything needs to be fast, and also requirement keeps changing daily. So there's a dilemma here between deploying our application very fast, and also to implement security features, because we have to remember that security requires resources, means time and money. So you have to find a compromise between these two. It's either to implement security or to deploy your application very fast. So I've heard discussion about versioning, because as we can see that every year that PHP and also Laravel, and also including the libraries, also comes up with new versions. What we have to know from these versions is we have to focus on LTS, long-term support. And for PHP, we can see they have a cycle. Every language frameworks, they have their own release cycle. So you can see it from PHP website. If you can see, the red one is the end of life, meaning they are no longer supported. The orange one is they only support for security patches. And the green one is still actively being supported for bugs fix and whatnot. So it is better to stick onto the LTS. But if let me go for Laravel as well. The current version is, I think, 8.3. If you can see, some of the web also is currently still using version 7, which is also meeting its end of life last year, I think 2020. Yeah. So you have to watch out for this, because for critical services, that if you are providing critical endpoints, if you are under B&M regulation, for example, if you are doing a pen test, this version will play a big role, because you are going to fail the pen test if they discover the version is being deprecated or something. So I have to keep in mind that. Also, apart from PHP version, Laravel version, also we have to check on the version of the libraries that we are using. If you're using a web server, okay, this is for, I think, relevant for if you are deploying on a cloud or on-premise. Also, if you are using Docker as well, because somehow we still need a web server. So if you're using Nginx, Apache, so you still have to have to check the versions. And OS version, if you're using a cloud, if you're using Ubuntu or CentOS, and your database version as well. Please to keep it, to use the LTS. Of course, it depends on your use case as well. We can discuss further on that. Okay, basically, this is to summarize. This is intended for developers and programmers in the talk. First, we are going to go through one by one for secure codes. One thing to remember is that when we are using version control, in our Laravel project, always remember to remove env file from your commit, because some of the projects that I've seen before still commit this env file. It's better to remove the env file that some are marked with production stage or testing. Better we wildcard it so we can remove all the env files. The second one is to, basically we have to catch an error and do not expose any unnecessary error. Let's say, because some errors might contain information about the directory itself, and also critical data about what threat actor can know about which system are we running. So basically we can handle the error in controller, and also we can have what we call a helper function to generalize some sort of catching all of the error. And it's best if we can some sort of have an error mapping this kind of error relates to a different message error that is a very what we call it's a customer friendly and user friendly. And also, if we want to log the error, we can also have some sort of exception management based on the error severity. Based on the error severity, we can send an alert to incident response team. For example, if it is some critical error or hacking stuff has been discovered, so we can send notifications of email notification or also push notification to our incident response team so they can react to that. And one more thing for log files. So we need to have a policy where how many days that we need to store our log files. Let's say, for example, I think in Laravel, they have a default value of 7 days. If you don't have any policy, it is best to keep it 0 because it will forever store your log files in the log directory. But you have to also have a action plan when you want to download all these error files and backup somewhere else, because otherwise your server are going to get clogged with the error files. For third-party APIs, you can also use Papertrail and Slack. I think Laravel also supports this by default. So you just have to register and also implement the API keys. And one thing to remember in log files, to remove any sensitive data if you can. For example, if a customer request and response, because customer information can be considered as sensitive data as well. So I think one of the most important thing that we have to do is to secure our assets and secure our endpoint is to validate and sanitize the input that we are receiving from user. There are many different levels that we can do this. I think at bare minimum, we can do it in controller, but if you can, and if you have time, you can do it also in the client side. For client side, HTTP, you can implement HTTP input type. You can restrict it to number, for example. So it can impact, it will have an impact on different devices, where on mobile phone, I think it will just pop up a keyboard with numbers. And also you can restrict it for email, so you can have a front-end validation. Also a good thing to have is also to have a max length, min length, and required as parameters there. But this is the very first level that we can do. The most important is to handle it in our controller. Also, Laravel comes with built-in validator that we can use. It has all of different I think flavors that we can different parameters that we can required string, minimum and maximum. We can also format into regular expression what kind of format that we want. So you can refer to the validation in the documentation. Pretty standard stuff. Okay, this is a very quite on. It's not really common, but if we handle our validation in controller, it means that we are sanitizing the user input. Whatever user sends from client to the controller, we will sanitize it, the request. But if we want to handle it in the model side also, this is the second layer at the back end. It is to protect, to minimize error, meaning we can use Laravel model validation library. Pretty nice library. It have the similar parameters as a validation as well. What it does is to sanitize before it saves the data into database. Okay. Next one, I think the most important is to never use a raw query for Laravel. I think if we have time, we can show the demo on what exploit that this can introduce into your system. Use Eloquent. and raw query is prone to SQL injection, also stated in Laravel documentation as well. And I think rate limiting is also, I think not many developers use this, but it is a good practice to have, and also depends on your use case. If you have a very popular application, for example, then it's best to implement the rate limiting middleware. And you can some sort of customize your rate limit strategy depending on use or on your use case. It's either you want to implement a certain rate limit to certain APIs, for example, and also it can also be customized for one session, one user, this much amount of rate limit. You can look for some example online as well. And one more thing is to implement reCAPTCHA. This is best to prevent bots and spam. Also is only applicable for sensitive endpoints, not for all endpoints. Have to remember that. Otherwise, you are going to annoy your end user. Implement the reCAPTCHA in your controller. And if you remember, there's some issue about MySejahtera as before, because random people are getting SMS. It is because they don't at that time implement a reCAPTCHA on their validation, because when you want to register your check-in points, you have to register your phone number. So it will send a verification to that phone number, because they don't implement reCAPTCHA, and that people starts to abuse that API. You have to remember that every SMS is a cost, and also some of the email services that we use will also have a cost. So to avoid mail spamming, it's better to implement reCAPTCHA. Please remember that it's best to implement the logic in controller, not in view. We can discuss further on that, on why. Also, I think IP whitelisting, not many people implement this, but it depends on your use case. If you require it, it's better to have IP whitelisting on certain endpoints. For example, if you have, because Laravel is some sort of what we call, it's a monolith application. It's built like that. So it depends, like you are serving for mobile application, and also from the same application, you will have your admin dashboard as well. So if you have that kind of structure, then it's better to safeguard your admin portal with IP whitelisting. There are different strategies that we can go about with this, but at the very least, I think on developer level, we can implement this IP whitelisting. Okay, for one more thing, for next one is for payload encryption. This is for data in transit. When we are sending data from client, from the front end to the back end, it is, I think it depends on use case. If it is involving critical data, financial data, it's better to encrypt the payload. For encryption, it is best to protect your endpoints, because if people want to abuse your endpoint by a man-in-the-middle attack, and also to sniff your parameters, you can protect from that. It's better to use both RSA and AES encryption, because RSA alone, I don't think it is sufficient to encrypt your whole data. Sometimes payload tends to be very big. So because RSA is limited to your key size, so it's better to use it both ways. I think use RSA and also AES at the same time. If we can discuss further on the implementation, if you are interested in the Q&A session. For data at rest, where we store in database, and also for the env variables, it's better to protect, to encrypt the sensitive data. You can, I think you need to identify what type of sensitive data first. Not password. Password we need to hash. We don't encrypt, but different sensitive data. If you are PCI DSS compliant, then you want to store credit card information, for example, then that is sensitive data where you need to also encrypt when you are storing it in database. And also for env variables, if you want to store API key and API secret in env, then it's better to encrypt it. Just in case if the information got leaked, then it is still safe if the encrypted version got leaked. Okay, I think next is to implement audit trails. This is for better security practices, because audit trails means that you want to log user actions. At the very least, the information that we need is user ID, timestamp. The action that they do is either they update, they view the data, they create another data, and we need the information about the whole of the payload and also what response that we give. If you are very interested in this, also you can check out the event sourcing design pattern. I have experience using this because last time when I was involved in SEA Games in, I think, Manila, I think 2017. So I designed an API for them where I implemented event sourcing design pattern where I can always go back to the previous records and some sort of like version control like Git, so you can go back in history and also fast forward on your data. So if you are following event sourcing, then you never delete your data. Every transaction is being logged. It's very interesting. You can check out. Okay, if you're connecting to third-party APIs, make sure that you do that in controller and not in Vue, because I've seen some API documentations from third parties. They prefer to have in browser what we call in Vue some sort of connection to their backend. I think it's better if we move everything to controller, because we can safeguard the tokens and also secret keys as well. Remember, if we put it in Vue, then it can be sniffed. Okay, I think next 2 slides I'm just going through very fast because so many things to cover. It is applicable for DevOps. If you want to, because for Laravel, we want to, when we develop, we want to deploy to some sort of staging environment to test. It's better if you have a dedicated domain for that. And also for, if we want to deploy, it's better to only whitelist a certain IP address. I think you can use VPN, for example, then only your within your team can connect to that testing environment. You can use a I think for dedicated domain and subdomain, for example, it is recommended for you to use a different domain than your production one. Don't use a subdomain from your production. Get a dedicated domain or dedicated subdomain for testing, and you can test online. For testing, at least please enable HTTPS. Let's Encrypt provides free HTTPS certificates. You can try to scan for vulnerabilities of your Laravel applications to check on your endpoints as well, and also do some pen tests on your server configuration. Some tools like Nmap, Nikto, Metasploit, it's very famous. Okay, next is to do some selective debug mode. Okay, if you can see on my slide, there's a excerpt from Laravel documentation where it says we can hide certain environment variable from debug pages. So we have to identify like username and password for database. This is all the environment that we need to hide. So you can set it. It's better to hide this kind of information from your debug. Okay. Third-party APIs and keys, because we tend to put these third-party APIs and keys in env. If your AWS, for example, if you're using S3 for data storage, you store your images in S3 in AWS. If you are using if you put your secrets API secrets and API key in your ENV, if it got hacked, and also it will expose your secrets and keys. If you are using this for AWS, first remember to follow the correct configuration. Never use your root API key, and also please restrict it only to that specific action. You can use IAM for AWS. Then you restrict it only for that purpose. As well for your email and also for your SMS third-party provider, please protect your API keys. Last one is, I think, to use Cloudflare. I think it's very common. The benefit is you can hide your real IP address. It also comes with firewall, DDoS protection, and bots. I think the free version is good enough if you don't have anything I think critical. But there are some configuration also for Cloudflare for you to make it work. We can discuss again later. So, okay, when deploying to production, for VPN to production environment, okay, first you need to make sure that on your production environment, you only on your firewall only expose I think what we call necessary ports. In case for Laravel, I think port 80 and also HTTPS 443. If you want to access, if you are deploying into cloud server VPS, for example, then if you want to shell into your server, it's better to have a jump server, or you have to create a VPN. Otherwise, people can scan your server and also try to brute force your password, your SSH. Use a dedicated domain for that. Okay, separate it from your staging and testing environment. Enable HTTPS. Let's encrypt or paid. Also, Cloudflare also can provide a free HTTPS for your site. Try to scan for vulnerabilities. Try to have some internal pen test done also. Make sure debug mode is off. This is very important. So, I've seen some production website, they forgot to turn off their debug mode in the ENV. Also for database connection, it's either if you are using different server for database, make sure you whitelist that. That means the database is only accessible using IP address or certain VPN with limited user role. Never use your root user for your Laravel application. It's very dangerous. Okay, another one is to hide third-party keys. For example, yes, I've mentioned earlier for AWS S3, and also for email, SMS, and Firebase. All these keys are very important. Sometimes we do share the keys between staging and production environment. So if you turn on debug mode in staging, and if your ENV got leaked, then they can also access your production keys as well, because it's the same. It's very common to use the same because we will never, I think, usually we will never use different keys, different account for SMS third-party provider. So it's better to protect it. So next one is also to use Cloudflare. The same one, also it has bots protection analytics as well. It's very good. And some of the configuration that we need to remember is that to enable TLS 1.2 minimum, because I think by default it only enables 1.0, which is quite vulnerable for now. And it's better to always allow HTTPS as well on Cloudflare. And last, only to expose port 80 and 443, depending on your use case. Okay, let me go through. This is going forward. I think you can also deploy your environment, your Laravel application in AWS Lambda, and also Laravel Vapor is like a serverless environment where you don't have to configure the server. So zero configuration is just deploy, and you don't have to worry about that security because they will handle the security for you. I think if we have time, we can go through some demo. Jess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, can you see a screen? Okay.
Yep.
So I've deployed some vulnerable Laravel application where if you can see here, it has some API that can show you the content in database. Basically, what you can do is you can sort by name here, and also you can sort by ID. So you can see you will sort that by ID. So from this API, if we want to do some pen testing, right? Because I've talked about SQL injection is vulnerable if you don't validate user input. What? Actually, let me share another screen. Let's go to the hacking terminal. Okay. So one of the tools that I'm going to use tonight is SQL map. So we are going to check for vulnerabilities in these endpoints. Let's see. You can see there's some vulnerable here. It can show you the PHP version and also the server version, web server and Nginx. MySQL 5.0 is very old. Okay, so now we can see that this application is vulnerable. We can try to get the current DB. Okay, if you can see here, the current database is test. Set up that simple database name as test. So if we want to enumerate the tables in that database, we can select the database name test, and also we check for tables. So this is what happens if you have an unsecured application. This is things that we need to avoid. So you can see that we have a few tables in the events, migration, password reset, and users. So you can have a table dump. The next one is you can select what we call let's see if we can dump the users. See, so you can get the name, the content of the database itself. So security is pretty much important. Imagine that if this is your credit card numbers and whatnot. So cybersecurity is very important. Very important to follow your policies on cybersecurity and follow the best practices. Of course, there's so many things that we have to do for cybersecurity, but at least implement the basics that we have. I think I'm done with the demo. Let me go back to the slide. Okay. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If I know, I will answer. If I'm not, then we'll find out for you. Also for ITX, we are currently hiring. If you are a Node.js developer, Flutter, Laravel, React, .NET, WordPress, And also we are looking for DevOps and also cybersecurity officers as well. If you are interns, then you can send an email to me. We will always have a place for you here in ATX.
Nice. Thanks, Ibrahim. Whoa,
Thank
an
you.
opportunity also for especially those. I think there's a few students that join us as well. So yeah, there's an opportunity with ATX with Ibrahim. And of course, okay, let's see what questions do we have here. Okay, from Hassan. Any specific library you use to implement event sourcing for audit trail? So do you use Q, eventual consistency, or it has to be persist before continue?
Okay. Last time when I implement event sourcing, I don't use any library because I don't find any suitable library. That time I wrote that in Node.js. So I basically create my own event sourcing implementation. So I don't use any libraries. At that time I don't think I find a suitable library. So it's better to implement and write my own.
Nice. Okay, thank you, Ibrahim. So we got one from Raj. Shared hosting is secure or VPN? Not referring to AWS or Google. Is secure?
Okay, shared hosting or VPN. I think you mean a VPS. VPN is a different thing. VPS is a virtual private server. Shared hosting, of course, not secure. It depends on your hosting provider as well on how do they implement segmentation. But if you want to deploy Laravel application, for normal website, shared hosting is okay. If you don't have any critical information there, then it's okay. But I think for Laravel, I think it depends on your use case. It's better to have a dedicated VPS. Because if you are not sure about how they implement encryption and that data segmentation, then it's better not to store any critical information there.
Okay. And we got Muhammad Halim asking, can you share what vulnerability you found so far when you use any scanner to scan projects built using Laravel?
Okay. I think the first thing that we need to scan is if our debug mode is on or off, because if we are using, for example, Nikto, it will if you are using just the default setting, it will enumerate all the available actions on selected endpoints. Then if these endpoints only accept get and post requests, and you are sending delete request, for example, then it will throw an error. So that error will show that it's either not found 404, for example, or if you have a debug mode on, then we show all of your variables, your env on your session as well. I'm not sure if I can show you here. Let me check here. If I can clear the cache and reintroduce this. Okay, better we go through if we have time, then I can try to show you.
Okay. So move on to the next question, or you're pulling it up?
Okay, MySQL Secure or GraphQL from Raj Kumar.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. MySQL, SQL, NoSQL, GraphQL. I think there are new flavors as well of database. The security it depends on your configuration and also the version, because the database itself, we cannot say that it is insecure or secure, but it depends on how you configure it.
Fair point. Okay. We got Luvesh here asking, with reference to your demo, were you able to retrieve those information about the DB name, table names, and user information because you were using raw SQL injections?
Yes, I was purposely using a raw SQL injection. Yep. Because if we are using raw, SQL without filtering, then this is what happens. So it's just to show you. And for this, I think if you want to have a challenge, I think I will leave this website, this server open. HTTP, let me put it there.
Nice.
Your lol.xyz. For anyone that feels they want to try their pen testing skills, there's a vulnerability here that you can try to get to spawn a shell, a reverse shell back to you. If you can do that, you can send me a video and then we can send you a prize. I think we can give you 7 days. I will open it for 7 days. Whoever got it first, then I can inform Jess.
Okay, got prize, huh?
Yeah, I got prize.
ATX sponsor. Okay. All right, hackers, start doing your job here. Okay, we got one from Hassan. Any comments on invisible database columns? Okay, he gave a.
Let me check Twitter. Doesn't look malicious.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at as well.
Invisible database column. There's new concept in MySQL 8. What does it mean? Okay, to be frank, this is new for me.
Would you have an answer for that? Or you come back to him?
Yes, I need to check if we can introduce any further exploit from this behavior of MySQL. And also we can check for exploits if they have, because this looks like some misbehave of MySQL. So if you can go to exploit DB if MySQL 8 has any particular exploit to this behavior.
Oh, I got an anonymous person asking me this question. Any good resources books for some basics in cybersecurity? We are using SSH to our Laravel app and SSH tunneling to our DB. And I was tasked with finding any potential improvements in finding security faults in our API, and I'm not sure where to start. Any advice on that?
Okay, it looks like it's a very hands-on kind of DevOps task, I think. So you are using DB tunnel. Can you paste the question in the chat?
Okay, wait. Let me just.
I can.
This person want to
split it into few.
Okay, hold on. Let me just copy and paste this.
Okay, you're using SSH. Okay. Okay, SSH to Laravel and also SSH to tunnel to DB. So they can. So there are two scenarios here. It's either Laravel application and the database sits on the same server, or Laravel in a different server and DB on a different server. So now you want to find any potential improvement on finding security fault. Okay, resources. I can say that any improvement that you can do is basically if you are using SSH tunneling, that means you are exposing your SSH port open. So it's better to have to implement, okay, for your Laravel and also for your database, it's better to close your SSH port to different IPs, meaning you only allow a specific IP. So you create a VPN, and then from your VPN you can connect to your Laravel or your database. So you can do that. It's better to close your SSH port, and also at the front level, better to please remember to use Cloudflare, and also on if you are using Cloudflare as well, then please remember that to enable DNS, because some people, they are using Cloudflare only for what we call, let me show you, DNS only, right? So if you set it to DNS only, then you won't be protected with your security features. So what you can do is to change from DNS only to proxy status. Okay, on the front you can use Cloudflare. On the back, it's better to use a jump server or VPN, and close your SSH.
Okay. Okay, last question, as we're over our timeline already. How about enable MFA for SSH? Is that good enough to improve security?
I've never seen some MFA implementation in SSH for now. I'm not sure if there are some solution that provide that. But if you have that MFA, it means that your port is open to outside. Then people can try to scan your server, and also can try to enumerate if there are some exploits available for your SSH. Let's say you are using OpenSSH, then if there are some zero-day exploit found out for that, because you remember new features introduce new functionalities, and functionalities also can introduce new exploits. So have to beware of that. If you want to minimize, then totally close and use your VPN, also jump server to connect. But if you want to use MFA, I think it's good enough, but there are some pro and cons. For me, it's better to avoid totally.
Okay. Last one. Is the
Free Cloudflare.
Yeah, with all necessary security suffice to block the.
Yes. Short answer is yes. It depends on your use case. I've been in contact with Cloudflare representative as well. So if you're handling endpoints that has assets of millions, for example, then it's better to opt for their enterprise package. Also, they have a $20 package, like monthly for professional, I think, or business. But free is good enough. It depends on your use case. Free is good enough, actually.
Okay, thank you, Ibrahim. Okay, guys, I hope everybody learned something today. And again, thank you so much to all our speakers, Ibrahim, Gavin, and also Wayne. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. So I think before we wrap it up, so anybody who wants to reach out to Ibrahim, as you can see just now, his contact details are here. We will actually put up this recording up back at the link that you all sign up with, which is fuhla.com/developer. All right, and we'll be also emailing you soon. You can actually check your email on that. So I think without before we actually close this session, we would love to take a photo op now. Is it okay, Ibrahim, if you just stop sharing so we can have like a gallery view in our.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. So I would love to invite everyone, to turn on your cameras if you're okay with that. Yeah, let's have a photo op together. I mean, this is our first community program, and we're gonna have many more in the future with covering different programming languages. If you guys can just, or if you need like 20 seconds to clean your hair, it's totally fine. Yeah, I would love to invite all of you to turn on your camera so that we can just do a quick op. How I wish we are physically there with each other now. Hi everyone. Okay, can I at least have one page of humans rather than blank ones? Yeah, turn on your camera, come on. We are gonna be, hopefully COVID is over soon so we can all meet up and learn from each other, right? Yep. Okay, Jap, need to wear tudung. Okay, can, boleh. Okay, you can quickly just, guys can just use your sliver if you want. Yeah. Okay, can I have like 5 more people turning on their camera? At least. Okay, maybe 6 more people who turn on the camera. Come on, don't shy lah, guys. Yeah. Oh yeah. How about Sharia, Muhammad, Jason? Come on, turn on your cameras. Nabiha. One Azhar, Mandy, Liang, Rakesh. Okay, I'm not gonna just. Okay, there are 50 of you. No camera. Okay, tapa. Okay, lah, with those of you who can, okay? Come on, I can have 3 more. I don't want blanks here. Ocean, Nabiha, can you all turn on your camera? Ha. Okay, ah? Okay, all right. Okay, guys. Yep, you make. Okay, I'm gonna screenshot now. Pull this up. Okay, ready, guys? Smile, the camera. 1, 2. Okay. Okay, I want to take the second. Wait. Now the second page. Second page. Okay, now 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, that wraps up our day. Thank you so much again, everybody, for joining us. So we'll look forward to another new program. All right, this is going to be a quarterly event, so we'll update everyone very, very soon. And then thanks again to our speaker, Gavin, Wayne, and Ibrahim. Thank you so much for your time. So I'll see you all guys next round. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jess.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.